15,000 pounds of food, 1,000 pounds of coffee, 130 hungry sailors. The Navy's submarine faced the ultimate challenge. No sunlight, no fresh air. How do 130 men survive in this steel tube? And how do they eat, sleep, and even survive for 3 months underwater? Picture this: a British nuclear submarine surfaces after staying hidden beneath the waves for 201 straight days. That's nearly 7 months without sunlight or fresh air. The HMS Vengeance didn't just break records, it redefined what was possible for submarine endurance. This wasn't just a test of technology, but of human willpower. The crew faced challenges most people can't imagine. No sunrise or sunset to mark the days, no escape from the ever-present hum of machinery. The air smelled of oil, sweat, and recycled oxygen, but they made it work because they had to. Their lives depended on it. Psychologists have studied submarine crews to understand how humans handle long-term isolation. What they found was surprising. The biggest challenge wasn't the lack of space or the stale air. It was the mental strain of existing in a world with no natural cues. Without daylight, sleep cycles warp. Without outside contact, even small irritations grow into major stressors. The crew used strict routines to stay grounded. Meal times, shift changes, and daily drills kept them from losing track of time. The submarine itself played a huge role in their survival. Nuclear reactors provided endless power, turning seawater into breathable oxygen. Food was carefully stockpiled in every available space, including showers, repurposed as makeshift pantries. Even trash had to be managed perfectly. One mistake in waste disposal could contaminate their limited air supply. To summarize, but technology only goes so far. The crew's real strength was their ability to adapt. They developed an unspoken code of conduct: keep noise down during sleep shifts, respect personal space no matter how small, and never complain about the food. When tempers flared, they diffused tensions with dark humor and shared purpose. Movie nights, card games, and letters from home became lifelines. None of this happened by accident. Every crew member trained for years before stepping on board. Every sailor stepping onto a submarine for the first time enters as a non-qualified in submarine warfare until they prove themselves. This isn't just paperwork. It's a months-long trial by fire where veterans test newcomers on every system from hydraulics to nuclear reactors. The goal? Earn the Silver Dolphin's pin, worn by every qualified submariner. These symbols carry more weight in the Navy. It means you can be trusted with 130 lives in an environment where mistakes sink ships. The qualification process leaves no room for shortcuts. Trainees must diagram every system from memory, explaining how oxygen generators connect to ballast tanks and what happens if a valve fails during deep diving. They'll spend off-watch hours tracing pipes through cramped compartments, getting quizzed by crewmates at random moments. One sailor might ask about fire suppression procedures while another demands an explanation of the reactor's emergency shutdown sequence. There are no multiple-choice tests here, only hands-on demonstration under the watchful eyes of experienced submariners. Emergency procedures become second nature through relentless drills. Flooding scenarios happen without warning, with instructors timing how long it takes to isolate leaks. Trainees practice locating and repairing electrical faults in complete darkness using only touch. They learn to distinguish between the normal hum of coolant pumps and the irregular vibrations signaling imminent failure. Every drill ends with a debrief dissecting what went wrong, because underwater, there are no second chances. The pressure extends beyond technical knowledge. Qualified submariners evaluate how candidates handle stress when sleep-deprived and overloaded with tasks. Can they remain calm when 3 veterans shout conflicting orders during a simulated reactor scram? Will they admit when they don't know something rather than risk crew safety? These tests reveal who can be trusted when lives are on the line. Earning the Dolphin's pin changes everything. Veterans scribe the moment an officer pins it to their chest as surpassing even boot camp graduation. Suddenly, they're no longer observers, but full crew members responsible for others' survival. The pin carries practical weight too. Qualified sailors receive submarine pay bonuses and become eligible for advanced training. More importantly, they gain access to traditions like signing the Qual Boat flag, a ritual marking their official entry into the Brotherhood. This shared ordeal creates bonds stronger than most military units experience. Submariners develop an instinctive trust. They've seen each other at their worst during training and know exactly what everyone is capable of. That trust enables the silent coordination needed during crises, when a glance across the control room conveys more than shouted orders ever could. Veterans maintain these connections for life, often recognizing fellow dolphins wearers decades later by subtle mannerism. Only about 1% of Navy personnel serve on submarines, all volunteers who knowingly accept the challenges. The selection starts before deployment. Applicants undergo psychological screening and intensive interviews. Commanders want sailors who thrive under pressure rather than merely endure it. This selectivity creates an unspoken standard. If you can't handle the training, you don't belong underwater. The Dolphin's pin represents more than technical competence. It's proof you've joined an elite group that operates where sunlight doesn't reach, where every decision carries life or death consequences. Submariners don't just work together, they survive together in an environment that constantly tests human limits. That shared understanding creates a respect that lasts long after they've left the Navy. Modern submarines amplify these traditions with technology that would astonish Cold War crews. Touchscreen controls have replaced some manual valves, and acoustic stealth has reached unprecedented levels. But the qualification process remains fundamentally unchanged, because when you're hundreds of feet underwater, reliable people matter more than fancy equipment. The control rooms of Virginia-class submarines look like something from sci-fi movies, with holographic displays and automated systems. Yet every piece of this advanced technology still relies on sailors who earned their dolphins the old-fashioned way, by proving they could keep the boat safe when everything goes wrong. Behind each glowing screen stand men and women who've memorized backup procedures in case the computers fail, because some lessons never change. They weren't just sailors, they were engineers, medics, and problem solvers who could fix anything that broke. When something went wrong, and it always did, they knew exactly how to handle it. That trust in each other's skills was what kept them alive. What's incredible is how normal it all felt after a while. The cramped bunks, the artificial air, the same faces day after day. It became their world. And when they finally surfaced, blinking in real sunlight for the first time in months, the most surprising thing was how much they missed it. The silence, the closeness, the unbreakable bonds formed in that steel tube. Now imagine living like that, not for 201 days, but for a standard 3-month patrol. Still no sunlight, still the same recycled air, but with even tighter space constraints, because while breaking records is impressive, the real story is how submarine crews do this routinely and make it look easy. So how do they handle the daily realities of life underwater? Let's start with the most basic challenge, finding a place to sleep in a hallway. Imagine fitting 130 men into a space smaller than a typical 3-bedroom house. That's the reality inside a submarine. Every square inch is accounted for, and personal space is basically non-existent. The hallways are so narrow that 2 people can't walk side by side without turning slightly. Crew members develop an instinctive sense of movement, twisting and ducking to avoid collisions in tight passages. After a few weeks, it becomes second nature, like muscle memory. The sleeping arrangements are even more extreme. Submarines use a hot bunking system, meaning multiple sailors share one bed in shifts. When one crew member finishes his watch, he climbs into a bunk still warm from the previous sailor. There are no private rooms, just rows of triple-stacked bunks lining the corridors. Each bunk measures about 74 inches long and 25 inches wide, barely enough room to roll over. A thin curtain provides the only privacy, separating the sailor from the constant hum of machinery and murmured conversations just inches away. Personal storage is just as limited. Each man gets a locker roughly the size of a briefcase for everything he'll need during their months underwater. That means clothes, toiletries, letters from home, photos, and any small comforts have to be carefully chosen and tightly packed. Extras aren't an option. Sailors become experts at folding, stacking, and repurposing space, or rolling socks into shoes, or using pockets for extra storage. Yet somehow routines develop that make this extreme closeness work. Noise discipline is sacred. Someone is always sleeping, so submariners learn to speak quietly, close doors gently, and avoid sudden noises near bunks. Even minor disturbances can escalate tensions when people live on top of each other for months. Crews develop their own unwritten codes. Knocking before opening a curtain, keeping shared spaces tidy, never hogging the rare hot shower. The lack of daylight and fresh air only makes things harder. Without sunlight, the body's internal clock drifts, making sleep erratic. Some sailors report waking up disoriented, unsure if it's day or night outside, not that it matters hundreds of feet below the surface. The constant artificial lighting tricks the brain into ignoring fatigue until exhaustion takes over, but submariners adapt. They carve out small pockets of normalcy, A folded photo taped inside a locker door, a paperback book passed between shifts, the steady rhythm of routines, meals, drills, maintenance provides structure. Even the submarine sounds become familiar. The distant thrum of engines, the occasional creak of metal under pressure. Veterans sometimes say they sleep better underwater than on land, lulled by the vessel's vibrations and the reassurance that everything is functioning as it should. The real secret is how crews turn these constraints into advantages. The closeness builds camaraderie, shared hardships create inside jokes, unspoken understandings, and bonds that last long after the mission ends. When tensions flare, and they inevitably do, dark humor and mutual respect keep things manageable. There's no room for grudges in a space this confined. Everything in submarine life is about maximizing efficiency. Food lockers double as makeshift seating, showers operate on strict schedules to conserve water, even trash is compressed to save space. Sailors joke that after months on board, they forget how to walk normally. On land, they instinctively turn sideways to slip through doorways that don't exist outside the sub. But what happens when it's finally time to sleep? That's when a real challenge begins. Because resting in a metal tube underwater is nothing like sleeping in your bed at home. Try sleeping in a space barely bigger than a refrigerator. Submarine bunks measure exactly 74 inches long and 25 inches wide. That's shorter than most mattresses and narrower than a standard office chair. Headroom tops out at 18 inches, forcing sailors to sleep flat on their backs. There's no rolling over without hitting the wall. The USS Missouri had just 94 bunks for 135 crew members, meaning over 30 sailors were always waiting for their turn to lie down. Hot bunking turns sleep into a logistical puzzle. When one sailor finishes his shift, he climbs into a bunk still warm from the previous occupant. Sheets stay damp with sweat, pillows hold the indent of someone else's head. Personal space disappears completely. Your bed belongs to 2 or 3 other men depending on the watch rotation. Some crews develop systems, leaving small tokens like folded notes to signal when a bunk will be free. Others learn to sleep through anything, adapting to the constant coming and going around them. The Navy used to operate on an 18-hour cycle, 6 hours on watch, 12 hours off for maintenance, meals, and sleep. This schedule shattered natural circadian rhythms. Sailors reported waking up disoriented, never sure if it was day or night outside their still world. Studies showed chronic fatigue impaired decision-making. Now, submarines use a 24-hour cycle with 8-hour shifts, giving crews longer, more predictable rest periods. The change cut fatigue errors by nearly 40%. Paradoxically, the submarine's constant noise helps sailors sleep. The hum of reactors, the ping of sonar, the creak of metal under pressure, these sounds become familiar, even comforting. Veterans say the rhythmic vibrations of the engines feel like being rocked to sleep. New crew members take weeks to adjust, but eventually the absence of these sounds becomes unsettling. Some submariners report struggling to sleep on land because it's too quiet. Privacy curtains offer the illusion of solitude. Behind them, sailors tape photos of family, letters from home, or sketches of places they'll visit after deployment. Personal lockers hold everything they'll need for months underwater. A change of clothes, toiletries, maybe a paperback book passed between bunks. These tiny rituals create islands of normalcy in an otherwise surreal environment. Temperature adds another challenge. Submarines maintain a constant 72 degrees, but body heat in tight quarters makes sleeping areas feel warmer. Ventilation systems circulate air, but it never feels truly fresh. Some sailors sleep in just shorts, others bring small battery-powered fans. The smell of sweat, oil, and recycled oxygen lingers. No matter how often crews clean, sleep quality varies by location. Bunks near the engine room vibrate constantly. Those by the galley catch the smell of cooking food at all hours. The quietest spots go to senior crew, but even officers don't get real privacy, just slightly larger bunks with thicker curtains. Junior sailors learn to sleep through noise and light, training their bodies to rest whenever possible. Adaptation happens faster than you'd think. Within weeks, new crew members develop submarine legs, the ability to navigate narrow passages half asleep without bumping into walls. They learn to ignore the sounds of others moving nearby. Some even prefer the tight bunks, finding comfort in the enclosed space. One sailor described it as sleeping inside a hug. The real test comes after months underwater. Fatigue accumulates, tempers shorten, small irritations, a neighbor snoring, a flickering light feel unbearable. Crews rely on discipline and dark humor to cope. Jokes about coffin racks and submarine yoga help diffuse tension. Those who can adapt usually transfer to surface ships after their first deployment. But here's what's surprising, Many submariners miss it afterward. The constant hum, the closeness, the simplicity of life reduced to ships and sleep. On land, they toss and turn in spacious beds, unsettled by the silence. Some keep a fan running for background noise, trying to recreate the submarine's familiar rhythms. Now imagine trying to cook in these conditions, because feeding 130 men with no sunlight or fresh ingredients is its own kind of miracle. 15,000 pounds of food loaded onto a submarine for deployment. That's the weight of 3 pickup trucks packed floor to ceiling. Every can, crate, and carton has to fit into spaces most people wouldn't consider storage areas. Sailors sleep on boxes of food for the first weeks until they've eaten enough to clear the floors. Some shower stalls become makeshift pantries early in the mission. Space is so tight that cardboard packaging gets left on the dock to maximize room. Fresh food disappears fast. Fruits, vegetables, milk, and bread last about 2 weeks before the crew shifts to canned, dried, and frozen meals. After those first 14 days, a carefully calculated rotation begins. A Virginia-class submarine carries specific quantities for the long haul: 1,500 pounds of ribeye beef, 1,000 pounds of ground beef, 900 pounds of chicken breast. Even with meticulous planning, one crew reported being down to 1 canned ham and cake mix by day 110. Every gram matters when resupply isn't an option. Submarine cooks operate in galleys smaller than apartment kitchens while feeding more people than most diners. No open flames are allowed, just convection ovens, induction cookers, and specialized fryers. These chefs are considered the Navy's elite because they don't just prepare food, they sustain morale. Ice cream appears regularly, desserts come with every meal, and holiday feasts rival restaurant quality. The Navy knows good food softens the edges of extreme isolation. Meals follow a strict 4-day schedule: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and midnight rations for the night shift. The cycle rotates so crews on different watches don't eat the same meal repeatedly. Midnight meals aren't snacks, they're full plates with protein, carbs, and coffee. Lots of coffee. One submarine carried 1,000 pounds of it, enough for multiple pots per day. Caffeine becomes essential when sailors need to stay alert for 18-hour shifts in a windowless environment. Storage logistics border on extreme. Before deployment, every item gets evaluated by 3 questions. Can we eat it? Can we burn it? Can we eject it safely? Unnecessary packaging gets stripped away. Metal cans replace boxes to save space and resist moisture. Even waste has limits. Food scraps get compressed into bricks for later disposal. Nothing comes aboard without a plan for its eventual use or destruction. The cook's real skill shows in their adaptability. When lettuce wilts after 2 weeks, they pivot to creative uses for canned veggies. When flour runs low, desserts shift to gelatin-based options. One trick involves using pressure cookers to tenderize cheaper cuts of meat, stretching the protein supply. Sailors joke that you haven't lived until you've had Submarine surprise, a dish invented when ingredients run unexpectedly low. Despite the challenges, submariners eat better than most Navy personnel. The constant meal rhythm provides structure in a timeless environment. Friday nights might feature steak and lobster tail, a tangible reward for enduring another week underwater. Birthdays bring cakes decorated with whatever's available, sometimes just frosting on crackers. These small celebrations become lifelines when sunlight and fresh air are distant memories. Menu planning reaches military precision. Nutritional needs get calculated based on calorie expenditure in confined spaces. Carbohydrate-heavy meals fuel watchstanders working overnight shifts. Salty foods get balanced with extra water reserves to prevent dehydration from the dry, recycled air. Even condiment portions get measured. A submarine might carry exactly 20,500 pounds of sugar, not a grain more or less. Then there's the coffee culture. The brew never stops in the galley, where sailors gather during off hours, mugs get personalized and guarded jealously. Coffee breaks become impromptu therapy sessions where crews decompress. Senior officers know better than to interfere with this ritual. It's the nearest thing to civilian life these sailors have. All this effort serves one purpose: keeping 130 minds sharp in an environment that constantly tests their limits. When the last fresh tomato gets eaten, when the milk turns to powder, the meals still come on schedule. Because in the crushing darkness, a hot plate of familiar food can feel like holding onto the surface world by your fingertips. Now consider another invisible lifeline: the oxygen these sailors breathe, manufactured from seawater hundreds of feet below the surface. The air you're breathing right now seems free and endless, but on a submarine, every lungful of oxygen comes from careful engineering. Nuclear submarines don't carry tanks of compressed air. They make breathable oxygen on demand using nothing but electricity and seawater. Here's how it works. Massive electrolytic generators split water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen through a process called electrolysis. A powerful electric current passes through seawater, breaking H2O into its basic elements. The oxygen gets filtered and pumped into the submarine's atmosphere, while the harmless hydrogen gets vented overboard. An adult needs about 600 liters of oxygen daily just to survive. Multiply that by 130 crew members, and you're looking at 78,000 liters required every single day. That's enough to fill 12 average-sized swimming pools each month. The generators handle this massive demand by running continuously, powered by the submarine's nuclear reactor. As long as there's seawater and electricity, and on a nuclear sub there always is, the crew will never run out of air. But making oxygen is only half the battle. The air quality monitoring systems work quietly in the background, analyzing the atmosphere every second. Sophisticated sensors track oxygen levels, carbon dioxide concentration, and even trace amounts of dangerous gases like carbon monoxide or refrigerant leaks. These aren't simple chemical detectors. They use mass spectrometry and infrared technology, the same gear found in advanced laboratories. When something's off, the crew knows immediately. The system boasts 99% operational reliability after more than 5 million hours of use across the fleet. You might wonder why they don't just bring oxygen tanks. The answer is simple physics. Storing enough compressed oxygen for months would require massive, dangerous tanks eating up precious space. The electrolysis method is elegantly efficient. It turns two unlimited resources, seawater and nuclear power, into life-sustaining air without bulky equipment. The system is so reliable that during the HMS Vengeance record 201-day dive, air supply never posed a problem, despite the extreme duration. The distillation plant works alongside the oxygen generators to complete the life support loop. It boils seawater and condenses the steam into pure fresh water at a rate of 10,000 to 40,000 gallons daily. This water doesn't just go to drinking and showers, it cools sensitive electronics and helps operate other critical systems. Between the oxygen generators and water distillers, the submarine becomes a self-contained bubble of survivability, independent from the surface world. Yet the most impressive part isn't the technology itself, but how seamlessly it operates. Crew members don't think about breathing any more than you do right now. There are no alarms blaring about low oxygen, no rush to fix failing equipment. The systems hum along with such reliability that sailors focus on their jobs rather than their next breath. That consistency is crucial. When you're tracking hostile ships or maintaining nuclear reactors, the last thing you need is distraction about basic survival. A submarine's atmosphere does have tells for those paying attention. Veteran sailors claim they can estimate how long they've been underwater just by how the air feels. It grows heavier over time despite the scrubber's best efforts. The temperature stays a constant 72 degrees, but body heat from 130 men makes sleeping areas feel warmer. And the smell? Imagine gym locker mixed with machine oil, with an undercurrent of whatever is cooking in the galley. You stop noticing after the first week. This entire system operates without backup from the surface. If something breaks, the crew fixes it using onboard parts. In training, there's no calling for help when you're lurking 800 feet down in hostile waters. That self-sufficiency defines submarine service, not just in air production, but at every aspect of underwater life. Next time you take a deep breath, consider how effortlessly your body does what takes a nuclear reactor or electrolysis chambers and million-dollar sensors to replicate on a submarine. Now consider the invisible threat these systems guard against. Not lack of oxygen, but its dangerous byproduct. Carbon dioxide buildup happens when exhaled breath isn't scrubbed from the air fast enough. At just 3% concentration, it causes headaches and confusion. At 10%, it's lethal. And in a sealed metal tube, that tipping point comes faster than you'd think. The air in a submarine doesn't just need oxygen added, it needs carbon dioxide removed. Every breath a sailor exhales fills the confined space with CO2. Left unchecked, it would reach lethal levels within hours. At just 3% concentration, crew members would get headaches and struggle to think clearly. At 5%, they'd become disoriented. At 10%, they'd lose consciousness. Unlike running out of oxygen, which gives warning through suffocation, CO2 poisoning happens silently. The first sign might just be someone collapsing at their station. This is where soda lime scrubbers come in. These chemical filters use a mixture of sodium hydroxide and calcium hydroxide to trap CO2 molecules. As air gets pumped through the scrubbers, the chemical reaction permanently binds carbon dioxide into solid calcium carbonate, the same material in chalk and limestone. Each canister can process thousands of liters of air before needing replacement. The process generates heat, so sailors often notice when the scrubbers are working hard just by feeling warm air coming from the vents. But chemical reactions aren't perfect. That's why submarines use multiple backup systems. Some boats have redundant scrubbers running simultaneously. Others carry emergency lithium hydroxide canisters, the same technology NASA used in Apollo spacecraft. There's also a last resort solution, surfacing to ventilate, though this isn't an option during combat operations or under polar ice cap. The priority is always keeping CO2 below 0.5% concentration, roughly the same as in a stuffy classroom. Monitoring happens constantly. Advanced sensors check CO2 levels every few seconds, along with oxygen, hydrogen, and dangerous traces like carbon monoxide. These aren't simple chemical test strips. They use mass spectrometry and infrared technology found in hospital labs. The systems can detect changes as small as 0.01% concentration. When levels rise too high, alarms sound long before any health effects occur. Crews then cycle in fresh scrubber canisters like reloading ammunition in a weapon. These reliability is critical. These systems average over 99% operational availability across millions of cumulative hours. That means for every 100 hours underwater, the CO2 removal systems work flawlessly for 99 of them. The 1% downtime usually involves planned maintenance. Even then, backup systems cover the gap. This reliability isn't accidental. Sailors train constantly on scrubber maintenance, learning to diagnose and fix issues before they become emergencies. The scrubbers aren't quiet. Their fans and pumps add to the submarine's constant background noise. Veterans say you can tell when they're working hard by a distinctive metallic smell in the air, like wet chalk with a hint of ammonia. Some crews develop superstitions about certain scrubber units, joking that number 3 always acts up near deployment's end. In reality, every component gets tested rigorously before missions begin. Carbon dioxide isn't the only gas that builds up. Humidity from breath and showers condenses on cold metal surfaces, creating puddles if not drained. Body odor and cooking smells linger despite filters. Even harmless gases like nitrogen need monitoring because pressure changes could affect breathing. The air recycling system balances all these factors automatically, making hundreds of tiny adjustments each hour to keep conditions stable. Interestingly, submariners report that the air feels different over time. After weeks underwater, some describe it as thick or heavy, even when sensors show perfect readings. Others claim they can guess how long they've been submerged just by how the air tastes. These perceptions likely come from cumulative exposure to trace gases and psychological factors, another reason coast scrubbers work overtime during long patrol. The entire system needs no outside help to function. Unlike surface ships that can vent stale air, submarines must completely recycle their atmosphere. It's a closed loop where every exhale gets scrubbed and converted back into breathable air. This self-sufficiency defines submarine operations. Whether they're submerged for 3 days or 3 months, the air stays as carefully managed as the nuclear reactor keeping them powered. This precision extends to every life support system on board, including one that's often overlooked: the management of human waste in an environment where nothing can be left behind. Imagine dealing with every bodily function for 130 people in a steel tube for months at a time. Submarine waste management isn't just about comfort, it's a matter of survival. A single plumbing failure could flood compartments with sewage, contaminate the air supply, or even reveal the sub's position to enemy sonar. The systems handling human waste are as carefully engineered as the nuclear reactor propelling the vessel. The toilets operate on vacuum pressure, similar to aircraft, but with crucial upgrades. Flushing activates powerful suction that pulls waste into sealed holding tanks. These can process up to 1,500 gallons before needing evacuation. The vacuum system uses less than a pint of water per flush, critical conservation when every drop is made through desalination. Crews learn quickly not to flush while seated. The suction is strong enough to leave bruises. Sanitary tanks are pressurized with compressed air to eject contents. This only happens in international waters, at least 3 nautical miles from shore. Engineers time these discharges carefully. Too frequent and they waste compressed air. Too rare and tanks reach capacity. During Cold War missions, waste expulsion required calculating enemy sonar detection risks. Today's automated systems still factor in strategic positioning before releasing anything. Solid waste gets handled with similar precision. Food wrappers, used filters, and other trash are compacted into custom steel cans made on board. Each measures exactly 28.5 inches long and 9 inches in diameter, dimensions perfected through decades of trial and error. Crews stuff them full, then add metal weights to ensure the perforated cans sink straight to the ocean floor. A single patrol generates enough compacted trash to fill a small bedroom from floor to ceiling. The disposal process resembles launching a torpedo. Sailors load trash cans into modified torpedo tubes, seal the chamber, and flood it with seawater. Hydraulic rams then eject the garbage at depths where water pressure crushes the cans instantly. Nothing floats to the surface. Every item is denser than seawater by design. This system handles up to 150 pounds of waste per day without revealing the sub's location. The logistical planning begins months before deployment. Cardboard packaging gets stripped from all supplies in port to save space. Even cereal boxes are emptied into sealed containers. The galley tracks expiration dates obsessively. Spoiled food becomes both a waste problem and a health hazard. Engineers calculate exactly how many trash cans will be needed, factoring in mission length and crew size. Running out means storing putrid garbage next to bunks. Every system has backups. When vacuum toilets clog, which they do, crews can switch to manual pumps until repairs are done. Extra trash compactor parts are stored near the machinery. Even the sewage tanks have redundant valves in case primary systems fail. Sailors train for waste management emergencies as rigorously as fire drills because the consequences are equally dangerous. The psychology of waste management matters as much as the plumbing. After weeks underwater, normal bodily functions become team events. Privacy vanishes when 3 men share a single bunk and toilets lack doors. Crews develop dark humor about depth charge dodging during rough seas. Senior sailors monitor waste system usage like therapists, knowing irregular patterns can signal depression or illness. Oddly, veterans often praise submarine toilets compared to surface ships. The vacuum system eliminates odors better than traditional plumbing. The constant hum of compressors becomes a comforting white noise. Some even miss the ritual of compacting trash, a tangible, repetitive task that marks the passage of time in an environment without days or nights. This mechanical ecosystem keeps humans alive in a place nature never intended. Each swallowed toothbrush or misplaced wipe could jam the delicate balance. When sailors say everything on a submarine serves a purpose, they include the 2 a.m. bathroom trip that keeps the air breathable for 129 others. Maintaining sanity in these conditions requires more than technical solutions. It demands psychological strategies perfected over decades of underwater solitude, because when you can't leave, can't open a window, and can't even complain without everyone hearing, survival becomes as much about mental fitness as oxygen levels. Months without sunlight or fresh air would break most people, but submariners don't have that luxury. They exist in a world where time blurs, personal space disappears, and every action affects everyone around them. The psychological strain pushes human limits, yet somehow crews not only endure, but thrive. The secret lies in systems perfected over decades of underwater operations. Noise discipline becomes sacred law. With crew members sleeping in shifts around the clock, loud voices or dropped tools carry consequences. Sailors develop a quiet cadence to their movements, shutting doors gently and keeping conversations hushed near sleeping areas. Even coughs get suppressed when possible. This mutual respect prevents the tiny irritations that could escalate in close quarters over months. Privacy curtains provide the illusion of solitude, but everyone knows when someone's having a bad day just by their footsteps in the narrow passageways. Routines anchor psychological stability. Days begin and end the same way. Wake up, work, eat, sleep, over and over without natural light to mark the passage of time. Crews follow meticulous schedules to maintain circadian rhythms despite the artificial environment. Sunday mornings might bring pancakes in the galley, a small tradition that helps distinguish one week from another. The steady rhythm of drills, fire, flood, emergency surfacing provides both necessary training and mental structure. Entertainment takes on outsized importance. A single cribbage board might get passed between a dozen sailors, the wood worn smooth from months of use. Movie nights transform into major events, with crews packing into whatever space can fit a projector screen. Even military-issue food becomes an opportunity for creativity. Sailors follow armed forces recipe service instructions to make pizzas or desserts when ingredients allow. These activities aren't just distractions, they're lifelines to normalcy. Personal rituals help too. One sailor might sketch landscapes from memory during breaks. Another writes letters to family, storing them until the sub surfaces. Small comforts like a favorite coffee mug or a paperback book passed between bunks take on disproportionate meaning. Crews quickly learn which behaviors help them cope and which make the isolation worse. There's no room for negativity spirals in an environment where everyone's mental state affects the mission. The constant pressure of potential disaster actually strengthens resolve. Every submariner knows the story of U-1206, where a simple toilet malfunction forced the German sub to surface and scuttle during World War II. This awareness that small mistakes have catastrophic consequences creates a paradoxical effect. It focuses the mind rather than fracturing it. Sailors develop hyper-awareness of their surroundings, noticing changes in equipment sounds or crew behavior that might indicate trouble. Brotherhood forms fast in these conditions. With no privacy and constant proximity, crews develop an almost familial bond. Inside jokes spread quickly, often involving the absurdities of submarine life. Veterans describe it as the closest relationships they've ever had, deeper than college friendships or even some family ties. This isn't just camaraderie, it's mutual survival. When someone struggles, the crew notices and intervenes long before officers might. Qualifications reinforce mental toughness. The submarine warfare insignia known as dolphins isn't awarded easily. Sailors must learn every system on board, from hydraulics to air scrubbers, proving they can operate or repair anything in an emergency. This comprehensive knowledge provides psychological security. Every crew member knows they're surrounded by experts who can handle crises. The qualification process also creates shared purpose during long patrols. As experienced sailors mentor newcomers, Philly becomes both refuge and challenge. The constant hum of machinery and rocking of the sub helps some sailors drift off quickly. Others struggle with the disorientation of artificial days and nights. Senior crew members monitor sleep patterns like medics, knowing fatigue amplifies every other stressor. Those who can't adapt usually transfer to surface ships after their first deployment. The ones who stay develop an almost zen-like ability to rest whenever possible. When the HMS Vengeance surfaced after 201 days underwater, reporters asked how the crew remained functional. The answer was simple: we took care of each other. This ethos explains why submarine duty remains voluntary. Those who choose this life understand the psychological demands and embrace them. They aren't just serving together, they're surviving together in ways few civilians can comprehend. That survival depends on more than mental toughness alone. Behind every adapted sailor stands years of specialized training, turning ordinary Navy personnel into experts who can operate one of the most complex machines ever built. This training doesn't just prepare them for emergencies, it builds the unshakable confidence needed to spend months in a steel tube underwater without losing focus. The control room of a Virginia-class submarine looks nothing like old World War II films. Gone are the spinning dials and mechanical gauges, replaced by banks of digital displays and touchscreen interfaces. Multiple flat screens show real-time data streams, sonar contacts on one display, reactor status on another, navigation charts on a third. Officers monitor everything from air quality to torpedo readiness with quick taps on console keyboards. It's more like piloting a spacecraft than operating a ship, with computer systems processing thousands of data points every second. Yet, every sailor here knows how to fall back on manual controls if the electronics fail. These modern submarines run on commercial, off-the-shelf computer systems, a deliberate choice by Navy engineers. Rather than relying on expensive proprietary hardware, they use modified versions of technology found in business servers. This approach allows for regular upgrades. When new processors hit the civilian market, submarines can integrate them quickly. Software updates happen almost monthly, patching systems and adding new capabilities without requiring dry-dock time. The consoles resemble premium gaming PCs more than military hardware, right down to their ergonomic keyboards and high-resolution monitors. Noise reduction drives every design decision. Submarines use electric drive propulsion instead of traditional propellers, illuminating the cavitation sounds that reveal underwater positions. Even minor equipment gets soundproofing treatment. Pumps mount on vibration damping platforms, pipes wrap in acoustic insulation, rotating machinery uses magnetic bearings instead of metal ones. Engineers test each component individually in noise chambers before installation. The result? Virginia-class boats operate at quieter levels than the ocean's natural background noise at certain frequencies. They don't just like avoid detection, they disappear into the sea itself. The hulls represent manufacturing miracles. Constructed from high-strength steel alloys, each cylindrical section must fit together with near-perfect precision. Welders undergo years of training before being allowed to work on pressure hull seams. The tolerance for error is measured in thousandths of an inch. Any imperfection could cause catastrophic failure under deep diving pressures. When completed, these hulls rank among the most precisely manufactured objects ever made by human hands. Their smooth surfaces help deflect sonar pulses while withstanding forces that would crush conventional ships. Life support systems leverage cutting-edge chemistry. Electrolytic oxygen generators share technology with spacecraft life support, breaking seawater molecules into breathable air. Carbon dioxide scrubbers use advanced sorbents that last longer than traditional soda lime. Even the water purification systems incorporate reverse osmosis membranes borrowed from industrial desalination plants. These aren't just improved versions of old systems, they're complete redesigns using breakthroughs from other high-tech industries. Weapon systems have evolved just as dramatically. Modern torpedoes use fiber optic guidance cables instead of unreliable wires, allowing mid-course updates from submarine computers. Vertical launch systems can fire cruise missiles underwater, sending them arcing toward targets hundreds of miles away. Sensors now detect threats at ranges that would have seemed impossible during the Cold War, processing acoustic signatures through machine learning algorithms trained on thousands of ocean recordings. Yet for all this technology, human factors remain central. Control stations position key personnel within arm's reach of each other, maintain the instant communication submarines have always relied on. Backup systems include physical gauges and manual valves within easy reach. Even the most advanced touchscreen displays include tactile buttons for critical functions. Because when seconds count, muscle memory matters more than flashy interfaces. And the staggering part, these technological marvels aren't prototypes or one-off experiments. They're operational warships conducting year-long deployments right now. Nuclear reactors power them for decades without refueling. Advanced materials keep them diving deeper than ever before. And the sailors operating them, they're still qualifying the same way their predecessors did, by proving they can keep this incredible machinery functioning when it matters most. What really makes modern submarines remarkable isn't any single system, but how everything integrates seamlessly. Navigation computers talk to propulsion controls, sonar arrays feed data to weapon systems, environmental monitors adjust life support in real time. It's a symphony of interconnected technologies working in perfect harmony, a floating, diving, fighting machine where every component serves multiple purposes. That precision engineering extends to the smallest details. Conference rooms convert to medical bays, storage spaces become emergency sleeping areas, even waste disposal systems pull double duty as ballast management tools. In this environment, nothing gets wasted, not space, not resources, not human effort. After seeing what today's submarines can do, one thing becomes clear. We're witnessing the peak of underwater engineering. These vessels represent generations of accumulated knowledge distilled into machines that push physical limits while keeping their crews alive in arguably the most hostile environment humans regularly operate in. Which brings us to the ultimate question. After months underwater with all this technology, how do sailors readjust when they finally return to the surface world? The answer says everything about both submarine design and the people who serve on these incredible machines.